Welcome back to the Integrate Intelligently podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Brickler, episode 27, January 2025, Building the Future of Integration, a Developer's Perspective. So today we're joined by a wide panel. Of course, founder and CEO, Scott Brickler, and two of our software developers, Connor Hyde and Jake McCann. Welcome, everybody.
Hello. Happy to be here, guys.
Yeah, try me.
Yeah, great to be here.
So today is the largest panel ever. We have four folks, of course, me included, and Scott. Connor and Jake are two of our software engineers here in the local Cincinnati, Ohio area. Connor and Jake, every story I start off is like the hero's journey, right? The hero's story, the superhero foundation myth. So tell us a little bit about yourselves, how you got into software development, your backgrounds, where you went to school, that sort of thing. Of course, no childhood trauma, but other than that, anything you want to share.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Connor.
So I actually started off in computer engineering, which is kind of tangentially related to software development. It's a little more hardware focused. So I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do kind of leading up to college, which is, I'm pretty sure, a common scenario for a lot of people. But I had built a few computers up to that point, and I spent a lot of time on them just day to day. So I figured computer engineering would be a good place to go. I was quite wrong. The first year was good, but second year was brutal. We had digital design, which is like working with circuitry, breadboards, and power calculations. And then on top of that, I had a course called semiconductor physics, which was just a nail in the coffin. I decided I was getting out of that. I had some buddies who were in CS. I did a hackathon. I really enjoyed that. So I decided to pivot to CS, and I haven't really looked back since then.
I wanted to do chemical engineering when I was younger, and then I took a chemistry class in high school, and it sucked. And then I applied to OSU, and I didn't get in. Then I went to a branch campus, and then I applied to the School of Computer Science, and I didn't get in. Oh, and I also swapped to computer science because my 11-year older brother does computer science stuff, so he convinced me to do it, and making stuff is cool. But then I got into the School of Computer Science, and then I graduated, and then realized they didn't really teach me anything useful. So there was no losses at all for not getting into both those places the first try. And now I'm here.
Good. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you guys talk about like kind of the journey. Many years ago, Scott and I both were at university, both at University of Cincinnati. And of course, Scott wanted to be not a software engineer. If I remember, Scott, you wanted to be a mechanical engineer. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I wanted to do electrical and mechanical at the same time, and because I was a masochist and thought that'd be really fun to do. And then after similar thing, after realizing that would have been very difficult, and then actually landed in industrial engineering because that's what they let me into, because it was hard to get into engineering school, and just fell in love with the industrial engineering, and which is the engineering of processes, which is so ended up kind of sometimes your life works out the way it's supposed to, not the way you think it's going to. So it ended up working really well.
Yeah, it's such a true statement. I'm the only non-engineer on this call. Of course, I don't have a degree in engineering. We all know that I have a background in languages and was a teacher, but nonetheless, it is interesting the path that you take. No one has a direct path, right? It's very rare that you from birth you like, I want to be this, and then you go through all of life and then go to university and nothing changes. No surprise that we all had our own ups and downs and in and outs in terms of getting to where we are. But great that you guys are here. Tell us a little bit about like how long you've been at CADTALK? How did you get to CADTALK? What's your kind of experience or expertise?
So I got this job. I've worked here for like 3.5, almost 4 years. I got this job because I needed an internship, and my buddy Connor was an intern at CADTALK. So it was a very easy in. And then I showed up, and they gave me so much responsibility and freedom so fast, probably a little more than is wise, but it was pretty cool and enjoyable. I'm the backend architect, so I do a lot of the architectural design and architectural roadmap over the future, making stuff hopefully become better and more stable and more scalable over time. And yeah, it's about the stuff that I think about for 8 hours every single day.
Yeah, for me, I've been here since, I want to say, August 2020. It's been a long time. And what really initially drew me to CADTALK was just the challenge. There was a new challenge every day, and there wasn't any hand holding really, and it was unique things that we were getting to work on at such an early point in our career that I think it just kind of captivated me from the very beginning. And so what I'm working on now is I'm the development manager. So day to day, I'll look at any blocked issues. I'll specify some requirements for work items, do some more admin work, just kind of keeping the team moving forward. And then I have, of course, some standard development work items that I do on top of that.
Yeah, I want to highlight some of the things both of you talked about was the responsibilities, right, or the workload that you got. I guess really one of the things that CADTALK values is that I think one of our talk about values is that radical responsibilities and continuous improvement. And each of you, I think, alluded to that was you're going to get challenges, you're going to get new opportunities here. We want to empower everyone, right, to improve themselves, right? Because as I think Scott mentioned, the work works on you more than you do the work. And so this is really just a vehicle for, if you have the right personality, to improve yourself, to improve what you're doing, to learn, right? To learn fast and to grow. And that's kind of what I know for me, when we talk to each of you, that's one of the things that I so enjoy about talking to you or even having you on the team is that you guys don't shy away from challenges, even if it's new or if it's new to you or you don't know how to do it, you're more than welcome to go in there and figure it out. And a lot of life, a lot of our core values are related to that.
Yeah, and especially compared to like a bunch of my buddies who are in computer science who went to mega corporations to start off with, they sort of just became a cog in the machine. Now, granted, they never got to live through the pain of detonating 25% of a product on accident, but they never get the joy of when you make something work that's pretty big and pretty cool and new, and you get to rewrite a bunch of lines of code all at the same time, and people let you do it.
Yeah, I think the big thing is the difference between working at like Meta or Amazon or Microsoft or even kind of the stereotypical software engineer stream of like working for Nintendo or working for one of those big game developers is that at CADTALK you're going to be able to do a lot of great things, right? You're going to have an impact. Not that you wouldn't have an impact, say, at Microsoft or somewhere else, but an organization that big, you have a very narrow role, right? What you get to do, which can be very good if you're interested in that kind of work. But if you like, if you like me or like Scott or you have a fit here, is like you like to learn new things and try hard things and be challenged beyond just a narrow scope. And so you definitely get the opportunity to do that here. So talk a little bit about, what's one of your favorite or maybe your favorite thing that you've done since you've been here? If you were going to say, one thing that maybe you're proudest of or just one thing you really enjoyed.
I mean, there's always the first integration. That's going to hold a special place in my heart. I think always Business Central. But if I have to think of the thing that I've been the most satisfied about is probably the drag and drop support that we added for IFS. Not necessarily because it was a super complex problem, but it was taking a lot of constraints that existed within the product and within IFS and making it work with what we have. And I got a lot of gratification out of that.
Well, that's amazing because I'm learning for the first hand that you implemented that.
Yeah, it's been in there for product structures for a while, but we're still working on operations and engineering structures.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's awesome. I did not know that was there. So that's you're hearing it first. But it's exclusive here. We got that drag and drop functionality in the IFS application for product structures. That's really cool. Good, Jake, you.
So I'd say mine, it's something that I haven't fully finished yet, but it is a problem that I've conceptually solved, and it is separating the front, decoupling our hosts from our backend. Just because I sort of feel like since I started working here after school and I was like, wow, I'm relearning everything. I've sort of just been going through my entire college coursework over my entire career and relearning more and more complex topics. And this one has a lot to do with a bunch of multi-threaded stuff, which is pretty cool. And I've never dealt with process communication protocols or, I don't know. It's probably the most complicated piece of software I've ever written, but it's pretty simple to look at, which makes me feel especially nice. And I've explained it to a bunch of people and they nod their head and go, yes, I get it, which is a good feeling.
I think one of the things with software development, I think it's like people who don't realize it's like it has an art type of feel to it sometimes. Like people don't realize that. They think it's all like science and ones and zeros. And there's actually like a craftsmanship element to software development. People don't realize that if you were to build a piece of furniture and you look at it and you go, man, that's just a beautiful piece of furniture. Yes, it's functional. It holds my glass, my plates and forks and stuff. But the fact that it's just beautifully crafted adds to that. And that software has a very similar feeling to it. When you build something, it's like, oh, this thing is just built so well. The architecture is really tight, and I got unit testing in here to make sure it all works. And it's using really good architectural principles. It's just a piece of art, and that's really makes it really kind of both the analytical. It kind of satisfies both sides of your brain to work on code.
I feel that another aspect of that is like the timelessness of a piece. Because I mean, you could look at a nice car from the 60s and you're like, that car still looks pretty cool. And I think especially in software, since there's so much growth and development around like satellite libraries around every single language, it's really easy to like pick up a fad and then make a 1,000,000-line code project on something that is not going to be supported in 10 years, or there's going to be 10 developers in the entire planet who will ever be able to work on your project. And then you make a piece of shovelware and it disappears, or ghostware, it disappears into the night, never to be touched ever again.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know what a shovelware is.
It's like Connor, you know more of these terms. It's like shovelware. Shovelware is like garbage software that it's like a dime a dozen. It's like Temu software. Probably wasn't the proper term, but like ghostware would be, I don't know, so like a library that you use for a long time, and then all of a sudden there's not a single developer working on it forever, and it just sort of decays over time and becomes unusable and isn't supported by anything anymore.
Got it. Yeah, that's it. Go ahead, Scott.
I think a lot of the problems that we work on, is around essentially around building a platform or building something that has more uses. Like when we look at building something, what makes it interesting is like you can code something to do a thing. Most people can do that. I mean, heck, you can even get AI to do a lot of that anymore, where it's like solve this particular problem, just generate code to do a problem. But to solve a problem in a context that it could be reused is the skill. And that's essentially what we do here is we build a platform, is that we're trying, we're integrating to lots and lots of applications. And there's a lot of overlap of how those problems are solved. We could solve them different for every one of them and have a very inconsistent product, but we put a lot of thought into like, how do I build this so I can, once I solve this problem of drag and drop or solve this problem of communication with the back end, I can apply it to all of these integrations and have a consistent way of doing it that's highly reliable. Because, I think especially when it comes to integration, most integrations are done as custom software. They're built as either using consultants or things like that, or just build them for one-off type situations. And they tend to be very unreliable and have lots of issues, and they require a lot of maintenance, and they're very expensive. Our goal is to democratize that, to create a platform to make that easy to do and very reliable. But everything we build has to be thought through the filter of, how do I build this so I can apply the same principle to everything that we do, or as many places as possible across all these different integrations. And there's an art to that. That's what makes it interesting, is solving that problem.
I mean, that's how you avoid the shovelware comment I talked about earlier. Is like if you're using a piece of bespoke software that was given to you or made for you or you made yourself, most non-software companies are not comfortable dropping $200,000 a year on software engineers to maintain their product. That bespoke product will inevitably break every 6 months, no matter what, unless you had, even if you had the best genius writing the best piece of code ever, there would still be some level of maintenance that would be necessary. So the strategy Scott just described doesn't give you the risk of, hey, CADTALK only has one customer using this thing. They're going to eventually stop supporting it because they don't make enough money on it.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your guys' experience. I mean, Scott was talking about, we talked about it here in the podcast before, this idea of a platform. And the way I describe it to customers, partners, and other folks I work with is that, CADTALK's this idea that we have off-the-shelf integrations, that we don't customize, right? We don't write bespoke integrations, bespoke code, that we have a platform that's configurable, that every person who uses, say, one of our CAD add-ins, or one of our PDM or PLM add-ins, everybody who uses that add-in is the same, right? They're using the same piece of technology, same piece of same piece of code every time, right? No matter what you want to do with your integration, you're always using that added. Same with on the target side, like a PDM or PLM system, right? Whether that's going to be Info or IFS or Acumatica or Arena PLM, that other target, right? Everybody who uses that is going to use that same type of code. We're not going to alter it. So talk a little bit about, you guys, the challenges that you face, that you have to, the challenges you face in the day-to-day work to build a platform versus a bespoke integration or a bespoke piece of code, or what you call, Jake, shovelware, right? Something that you're going to use one time for one customer. Or like, let's say you have a piece of code like that you just copy and modify, right? I don't know if that there's a one of those cute terms in the software industry for, like, when you take a piece of a code and copy it and you modify it and then copy it again and modify it for every different customer or every different use case. But either way, talk a little bit about what it's like to have to work on something that you can't modify on a one-off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can start off with this one. One of the most difficult things, I think, is keeping the data uniform between different products that we support. So really the end goal of CADTALK is to move data from one software to another software, and the hierarchies and the structures of the data in each of those different products can be wildly different while they still have the same core principles. So one of the challenges that we're typically looking at is when we're moving things to a platform and we're kind of unifying everything, how do we keep those core principles of each different product while also, as I said, unifying them into sort of common patterns that we can use across different products and different features that we support.
And I'd say one of the biggest difficulties with trying to do that is no software development team is perfect, including the developers of these systems we integrate to. So not only are you dealing with, hey, there's some regular rational changes that happen, but every once in a while you're like, why did they do this? And there's just something out of left field that we have no choice but to deal with, because customers are going to update eventually. They don't care what the back end of this software they're using looks like, so they expect it to work every time, every minute of every day.
Yeah, that's a good point. Something that's unique to us because we're in between, right? We're like the middle child. We got a target, a source, right? We're taking data from one place and putting it in another with complex data structures, which Connor alluded to. Customers, they need to work, right? They don't really care and then we're working with each of those systems, and their developers aren't perfect either. They've written bad code in the past, and they have to make changes, or they write bad code now that we have to deal with. I mean, it's not uncommon. I think recently it was not uncommon that one of our integrations, they up and broke it. They actually changed exactly, like it changed how it used to work. I remember what we used to be able to do to call up something out of the API was like just all of a sudden gone. Like, yeah, it's just not there anymore.
Yeah, that's a really interesting. It's a different kind of development than a lot of people are used to or even see. It's like, it's actually really, really difficult to make bug-free code even when you control all of the code. And then, but I try to add the complexity of that you have your thing that has multiple versions or things that's evolving over time, and you have all the things that you integrate to, and they're all evolving over time, and then all the customers can be on any version of these things at any given time, and it all has to work always because it's critical, right? It's critical data. So the problem is really, really multi-layered. It's more complex than the normal development because of the fact that so much of it's out of our control, and we also have to deal with multiple versions of other products. We call this somewhat of what they call dependency hell. That you hear about in a lot of softwares. It's like a lot of software is built off of what they call dependencies, other libraries and things like that. And then the version, matching up the versions of the different libraries can be really, really difficult. Imagine making that even more difficult. That everything you integrate to also has different versions and libraries, things to work with, and that you also have to deal with the complexity and the changes there too. So that's the value we provide. That the fact that we will deal with all of that and solve all of that and manage all of that is the value we provide on top of solving the problem. So it's not just solving the problem; it's all the fact that you don't have to worry about all those other issues. It's just we're essentially making the customer we're taking that off the plate for the customer to even worry about. We'll deal with that.
That's a good point because, like customers sometimes will build their own integrations, or they'll they'll have custom development. And the thing that they're missing is, to your point, Scott, is like, we have to deal with all the variations, right? The upgrades to both sides of the equation all the time for all these different customers, new features that we want to develop, and all the dependencies that we have. Well, we got to account for all of that. If you build your own, every time something changes on one side or the other, guess what? You're stuck. You have to deal with that every single time. You have to update it. You have to fix it. And that happens. It happens much more than you think. So there is no shortcut to, or you're not getting out cheaper by building your own. I know a lot of people, I talk to a lot of customers, oh, we could just do this cheaper. I'm like, yeah, you don't realize the complexities of not just the integration itself, but like all the changes that are made now, especially with cloud-based software. I mean, Jake and Connor, I know you guys see it with our partners with cloud-based software. They're having two or more updates a year, and it is not. I mean, I know I talk to you guys every couple of weeks. It's not uncommon that one of those systems like changes the name of their API. They add new fields. They change name of fields. They just change it. It's like twice a year. Imagine if you had to write your own thing. You're going to be updating that thing twice a year. Or you're back into the situation of like you never upgrade. So now you're just using this old version from 30 years ago that you just keep putting off because of the pain of having to update your integrations all the time.
Yeah, the customer is not just buying the software; they're buying the system to maintain it as well. So it's like, so that everybody thinks it's just any one component. Like, I'm buying the right to use the software, but you're also buying the system around making it work every day.
That's right. Yeah, you're buying the expertise of course, Scott, who came up with the idea and built the original version, and the expertise of Connor and Jake and all the team around that, the expertise of knowing the APIs for both systems, the expertise of knowing how each system works, right? From a business standpoint and a use case scenario. Because even when you can have all the APIs, you can have all the integrations, but you have to fit the use cases. And let's be honest, customers use their tools the way that makes it easy for them. Not always the way it was intended to be used by the people who developed that tool.
I think Jake and Connor could comment on this because it made a different perspective. But there's like, how do we, like, it's part of our design of the art of the. I mean, I know I could talk to this because it's like, we obviously designed it, but like, I'd be interested to see your guys' perspective on it. Is like, how do we deal with variation with customers? Like, how do we drive that variation down, right? Because like the fact that customers use SolidWorks differently or they use the systems differently is a known, unchanging facts, and that's add the other layer of complexity. All of these systems we integrate to are changing by imperfect developers, and our code's imperfect. But then we also have customers who use the products that we work with imperfectly. Yeah. And how do we deal with that? Like, how do or from an architectural standpoint or coding perspective, how do you make that work?
One of the methods we have for dealing with those situations is driving that configuration to the users. So in a lot of target systems, we'll have functionalities that can be used in a lot of different ways. So if we can provide those same configurations to the users when it makes sense, then we'll do that. In certain situations, though, you can provide too much configuration to the users, which can make the product a lot harder to use. So we're also trying to kind of toe that line and not go that way. And when we find situations such as that, we typically will just match what the target system can do. And that usually can encapsulate all the functionality that people would need.
Yeah, I feel like the general safest approach that we try to take is get all of the same data validation setup as the end system. So like the same, hey, you can't enter this value here. You can't do this operation. You can't add this structure to this operation. This field is read-only, etc. And about as close as you can match up to that, we can expose as much functionality as we want to the users, as long as we just prevent them from having the ability to shoot themselves in the foot. I don't know, as long as the end system API usually agrees, there's a way to encapsulate whatever they're trying to do. And usually the API follows pretty closely to what you can do on the screens. One of the many, many thousands of screens in these systems.
I think it's a great example of it. It's like, you think about the spectrum of things that you can do. I mean, you could, on this one side, you could write the code to do it, everything you wanted to do exactly, and you do the API yourself. And then the other side, you're doing everything manually. And CADTALK lets you kind of turn that dial around that spectrum pretty well by providing a lot of flexibility to the configuration of the product to do more close to what you're wanting to do, but within the constraints that so we kind of create a prescription for how to do it, and then give enough hooks in place to let you customize it to your process.
Now, every software company has new features that they are creating, bug fixes. Sometimes, I think you guys talk about submarine code. I'm not sure what that means, but what do you guys prefer to work on? Do you like it better to work on major improvements, what I would call in a house, right? You call the plumbing, or do you prefer more of the, putting paint on the walls? So I know in my house, my wife and I have an older home, and we've worked on this house for years. You can see the house in the background, and I don't want to paint anything. Right, so you see all that fancy paint over there, different colors and stripes. I don't want to touch that. I have no desire. So, but I'll run plumbing, right? I'll build walls, I'll build decks, I'll do, the infrastructure, kind of underneath things. But not everybody's like that, right? Some people like to paint and like to pick out the paint in the bathroom vanity and the sink and that sort of thing. I don't want to do any of that, right? I just want to do the stuff that no one sees because that's just what I enjoy the most. So for you, if I use that analogy, what do you guys like doing as developers, as software engineers?
I'd say I prefer the plumbing a lot more because a lot of my day-to-day, I get questions from fellow developers asking how stuff works. And the greatest thing ever is when you could just say go read this file, and then they can read through it and be like, this makes sense. And just cleaning out the slop that really has nothing to do with the users, but has everything to do with the development experience is what I thoroughly enjoy.
Now, for myself, I think it's pretty common for all developers to like working on new things, which is an opportunity we get pretty often here, surprisingly. Well, not surprisingly, but I guess luckily. But I don't know. Strangely, I kind of like solving bugs. I don't like the process of actually figuring out where the bug is, finding it, fixing it, but the satisfaction I get afterwards kind of makes it all worth it in a weird way. So yeah,
kind of like a nasty workout, right?
Yeah.
Process, but you feel great after,
Exactly.
I know what you mean on that one.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, you just spend all days fixing bugs, and it's the most gratifying day, but the most painful day at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah. Being a non-software developer, right? I don't know which I would prefer. I've of course talked about configuration of CADTALK, and of course I've done tremendous amounts of that. After when I first started doing it was very satisfying because it helped me learn a lot how CADTALK worked in behind the scenes. Even though I can't read the code, I don't know how the architecture's built. I don't really understand that, but using that configuration and working with customers really helped me understand, at least at I don't know at a high level, but generally how CADTALK works behind the scenes in terms of what it does.
Like a data representation level.
Yeah, but even then, after I did it for several years, I just was kind of I'm done with this, right? It's it did have the same satisfaction as it did when I first started. Probably because I had, I felt like I had learned what I wanted to learn and the excitement of it, but I didn't get to do new things, right? Because in implementation or, project management, new customers, you're typically doing the same thing kind of over and over again with some variation, but 80% of what you do is the same. And for some people, that'd be great. But after a while, for me, it's just I gotta do this. I gotta, write this rule again or whatever, or I gotta write this. I gotta take this rule and make a slight variation of it. But that's good. That's good to hear that you each have your own thing. So, kind of wrapping up, I know that Connor, you mentioned that one of the things you enjoyed, was most proud of, was the your first integration because that was your first venture, right? Your first time doing something, and that was exciting. And Jake, you talked about some of the things you're working on now. I know from my perspective, one of the greatest things we did was that new licensing.
Mm-hmm.
Because licensing was such a chore in the past. That is a recent technical achievement from my perspective as in sales and in customer experience, both as we show the product, but also implement it. That new licensing process that we have that uses cloud-based licensing is really a huge improvement to the product.
Self-serve licensing services are very nice.
Yeah, much better.
I remember on my first integration, I had to wait for 5 hours to get a license that had access to the new thing that I had just created. And now I can do it on my own.
That's great, right? So what if if you were let's pretend that a co-op, someone who's an intern wants to have a job or get a job, what would your one piece of advice be for them, right? Someone starting new or in school today, right? Going to get their first co-op job, their first internship, or going to go into software development. What would your takeaways be being in the program, starting in CADTALK and working here? What would you recommend to them?
I think good piece of wisdom that I've learned in my years here has been to just don't over optimize or don't drive yourself crazy trying to find the perfect solution. Like when I started off coding here, I was very new. I didn't know that much about software development. I kind of just the baseline courses, but just being able to come to any sort of solution helps the team. Then they can kind of point you and give you directions towards the better solution. And that just furthers you into learning even more. And it's a very easy pit to fall into to try and find the perfect answer. So that's my advice. Just find something that works and go from there.
Yeah, iteration will always be far more powerful than anything you could possibly summon in your head at the one time that you're doing it. But I'd say, I don't know, make a tiny little thing in your free time and say, ooh, this piece of technology is pretty cool. With AI a lot, because they'll publicly expose their API for $20 a month. You can make a thing that's pretty cool. I don't know, I'm a big proponent of the going to a small company that'll let you muck about in a pretty good portion of the code base. Because nothing makes you learn faster than having absolutely no idea what's going on. But then they're like, well, you have the responsibility to know what's going on. and then you very quickly figure it out. And then you'll be wrong a lot. But I don't know. I feel like I've learned far more in these last 3 years than I learned in my 5 years of university. And I'm confident that I'll continue to learn a lot more.
So kind of wrapping up, one of the things that for me, being a former teacher, that I love about you guys is that you were students, right? I love to see my students when I had them graduate and go on to careers. One of my students, I don't keep it. A couple of my students went on, got scholarships, and studied the same thing that I studied. Some of them went on and they worked at NASA. Some of them worked at one of my students works at Blue Origin now. So, but I loved seeing that. I'm really, not that I had a major involvement with your guys' success, but I love seeing you guys go from working at the being students and now like being part of the team. It's just very fulfilling for me as a teacher to see that. So, but that's just kind of a sappy thing from a dad and a former teacher. What excites you about like the future of CADTALK? Like what we're doing here? What's your thing that keeps you motivated? Like, man, this is just really cool. When maybe you can't say it because it's something that we're going to roll out in the future. But what excites you about what we're doing and where we're going to go?
I feel like for me, I just got to the point where I know enough of the code base that I can see a lot of the very legacy stuff and some not flaws, but just some not very straightforward things and some very old technology. And it makes me excited to think of now know enough to understand these problems, which means I now know enough to get the troops to fix these.
Right.
Maybe not even fix the problems, but just rewrite in a cleaner thing or a newer thing or modernization. I am excited for modernizing stuff.
And building off that, I think we've been here long enough to kind of see the patterns and the common use cases for CADTALK. So taking that knowledge and transforming it into plans for how we can improve the code base and make it more configurable and more user-friendly. It's exciting having that knowledge now and being able to kind of do some of that planning.
Especially being in a space like this where the problem of linking two things together was always pretty cut and dry. Yeah, there's a certain amount of maintenance you need to do. There's a certain amount of love you need to give your software in order to make sure that it works all the time for the two softwares changing on both ends of the integration. But the world just got a new hammer, and the perfect nail is integration. And I'm excited to see if any AI stuff will end up making life easier.
AI definitely is, you hear it everywhere, right? I was at a conference last week, and AI is definitely, it's a buzzword everywhere, right? You hear it all the time. I even use it today, how powerful it is. So it will be interesting to see how platforms and other technologies, even like CADTALK, leverage AI in the future for sure. I think that's really exciting for me, at least, to see where it shows up and the use cases, right? I think a lot of people are struggling now to identify the use cases, especially in their own applications. So it'd be really cool to see how it turns up at CADTALK as well.
It's a good place to be, in my opinion, because when I graduated, I thought everything was solved. I thought every piece of software had been written, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a whole new caliber of things.
It's a whole new thing. Yeah, absolutely. It's a whole new thing. So Scott, before we wrap up, any key takeaways from a founder and CEO, and of course first technical founder. You wrote CADTALK, and now of course you don't do development now, right? So any key takeaways that we should think about that we're not thinking about now?
No, I mean, super proud of these guys. They've done an amazing job of learning everything, and and picking up the software. I think it's really cool to see a vision come true that you've had for over 20 something years now. It's like, and realize that you have other people that you've recruited others to help you support that vision. It's just really, really cool to see that, and then people get excited about it. That a problem like this, and that you were creating this opportunity, and then just see people learn and get and improve. It's always so much fun. So, and this is true of a lot of people who work at CADTALK. It's really cool that we get to showcase Jake and Connor, but it's like this is definitely part of the ethos of the company, is to continuously improve, look at this problem very closely, and figure out how to help manufacturing companies be as efficient as they possibly could be. And that's what we do.
Jake, Connor, any last things you want to say before we sign off?
I'd say the even integration is not an exciting problem, but there's still a lot of joy to be had. There's still so many unanswered, not crazy interesting problems that are fun to work on and still very rewarding. And yeah, if you're a student in CSE or computer science and you suck at school, just get the degree. It doesn't really matter.
I thought you were going to tell him to apply at CADTALK for a second.
No, it's yeah. I mean, I studied Latin and Greek, and to your point, not a lot of people would think that would be interesting, but everything is interesting. It's not interesting until you learn about it, right? When you don't know about something, it's never interesting. But as soon as you things become interesting when you have enough knowledge to be valuable, to understand what you're talking about, and then provide value, because you're like, wow, now I know something about this. And then it becomes tremendously interesting, because now you know about it, you can talk to other people about it, you can educate other people, you can provide value to a company or to even to friends or whatever. Then it becomes super interesting. I mean, it's unlikely that it was very unlikely. I remember for years, people, when I was telling them I was studying Latin and ancient Greek, they're like, what, why would you do that? Or they told me I took Latin in high school and they hated it, or they was horrible at it, or whatever. And how could I find that interesting at all? And again, it's like anything else. Anything is interesting once you develop that skill. I think that's a key takeaway in my mind, is that you got to give things time.
And I think the final thing that I have to say is the opposite is also true, because I was really interested in doing model development for AI models, and then I took an AI class. A lot of statistics. It's just statistics. It's not very interesting. The outcome is cool, but the process sucks.
Yeah, that's something that's something that's interesting and kind of key takeaway too. Everything that looks super cool on the outside is super cool on the inside.
Yeah.
Well, Connor, Jake, Scott, well, thank you guys again for joining this podcast. I really enjoyed this. Again, like I said, as a former teacher, and to see you guys, I hate to say grow up, because that's not the right term, but
become useful.
But I think mostly, mature, right? Go from being a students into young professionals, and to grow here at CADTALK. Super exciting, for me to see it. So I want to thank you guys for for being here and being on the podcast, but also for contributing, being huge contributors to the team and to our success. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. It's been an awesome journey so far, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Okay, well, that wraps up our episode of the Integrate Intelligently podcast. You can, of course, find us at CADTALK.com. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, of course, on YouTube. You can see our lovely faces here in live. We're no Joe Rogan, but nonetheless, in our own little niche, nice to be able to have these conversations. So, Scott, again, good to see you, and signing off for today.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you.